Today I'm going to show you how to get started on your Fauve Selfie inspired by Henri Matisse. We looked at a few different qualities of this self-portrait that he created, and we noticed a couple of different things. First of all, we have very bright, vibrant colors that are unrealistic. We have painterly strokes where you can see the thick brush strokes and the shapes of the different brush strokes. And we've got warm colors on one side of his face mainly, and cool colors on the other side. And then we have a nice colorful background as well. The first step is to start with your printed picture of your face. And our goal first is to glue it down to our thicker paper. Before you do that, you need to write your name and your grade on the back. Make sure you write your grade as well. Then what we'll do is we'll take our messy mat and make sure you put glue on the edges of your paper mainly, and then just put an X in the middle. That's the key. We don't need to load up with every inch of the back of the paper with glue. We mainly want to get the edges, but then having a little bit in the middle is good. So X, we like X boxes. And then add a little bit more to the corners in case that started to dry. And then you can glue it down, try to center it the best you can. Oops, at the top of your paper. When you smooth it out, make sure it's centered. Put another piece of paper on top, and then you can just rub it without worrying about getting any smudges on the paper. And let that dry for a few minutes. While that's drying, you can start thinking about what colors you're going to use in your self-portrait. We will be coloring over top of the picture in the style of Henri Matisse. And we'll be using oil pastels. Oil pastels look like this. They're kind of like crayons, but they're a lot more oily and a lot messier as well. It would be good for you to have a scrap piece of paper to test out your colors. Also, if you look here, they get pretty dirty. So it's good to wipe them off on a scrap piece of paper to clean them off as well when you're working. Like I said, as your glue is drying, what you want to do is think about what colors you'll be using. One side needs to be mostly warm colors. So we've got some peach, orange, yellow, pink would be warm colors, and the lime green. And then we have some cool colors, violet, regular green, and then blue as well. You will need to layer them and blend them and show the different strokes, but also keep in mind that you need to preserve the highlights and shadows in your face. If you look, we have shadows here, highlights on the cheekbone and the nose. So I think I'm going to, since this side of my face is a little bit lighter already, I'm going to do warm colors on this side, cool colors on this side. Some of the oil pastel doesn't cover very well. So what I'm going to do is use my yellow or my peach for my highlights. And I also have white as well. Like I said, make sure you clean them off on your scrap piece of paper. And I'm just going to start with going along the curve of my face, laying on the oil pastel. I can layer it. My goal is to try to cover up the paper as well as I can, the image below. So just want to start coloring, preserving my highlights and my shadows. You can see if I take the yellow and I try to color over a shadowy part, the paper, the print, shows through. So you want to make sure you take a darker color to layer on top of that so it covers up the darkness. I'm going to start using orange down here. And you can layer colors on top of each other as well. All right. Once you cover up the shadows, it's hard to see your details, so make sure you preserve those. I'm going to try some white. White might cover a little bit better. Ooh, this one's dirty. I'm going to try to leave some white on my highlights mainly. I'm going to find those first. We'll use that. Have fun blending colors, mixing colors, and make sure you keep your shadows and highlights preserved. When you get to some of the smaller sections, it might be a little bit more difficult to preserve the detail. But if you look at the example here, there are a lot of thick brush strokes, so don't get too bent out of shape about detail. Try to be neat and show the different highlights and shadows. But if you can't get that detailed, that's okay too. That's the style. All right, in some of the shadowed parts on his warm side of his face, he does use some blues and greens, and so I'm going to use that as well. I'm going to show you the eye, and then I'll let you get started. So for some of the detail, I'm going to leave the white part of my eye whitish, even though he doesn't in his drawing. Just going to kind of dot it around there. He used a bluish for his eye. My eyes are a little bit green, but I'm just going to use brown. Maybe some black. The eyes, you want to keep the same color from both sides. They're pretty dark. I want to add a little bit of a highlight, so I'm just going to dot a little bit. And then I'm going to use some blue. If it's worn down too much, you can peel some of the paper off, but please do not peel all the paper off because then it will make your fingers really dirty. So I'm going to take some of the blue, add some of the shadow in my eye. Also, I'm going to add some of my shadow under my cheek there as well. Maybe use a little purple too in the corners. And then I'm going to use a little bit of peach to show the highlight on the top of my eye. You can go off of his image because he has a good style of having his lighter section on the highlights and the shadows, and he handles his beard and his hair in a very interesting way. So be inspired by him. Keep in mind that your colors will blend together. So blue and orange, since they're complementary colors, they will make brown. So be careful about that. And you can keep your hair color somewhat similar to your real hair color. And you can incorporate some just regular skin color as well to keep some of those highlights. Try to have a variety of color over your whole piece of art. You don't want to just have certain colors in certain areas, but try to blend them together and add a variety of different colors. Well, boys and girls, I'm having fun with this. This is kind of like an experiment. So I hope you have fun drawing, and keep in mind you can always, one thing, if you make a mistake, if you take your fingernail or a toothpick, you can always scrape it off too. So if you need to scrape back detail, you can use a toothpick or your fingernail to do that as well. Keep in mind warm colors mainly on one side, cool colors on the other side, and have fun experimenting in the style of the Fauves.